A little while ago, I heard a message from Pastor Bill Johnson, and I'm probably not going to do a great job of representing it, but I'm gonna do my best. And of course, I give him honor. Most of the things I've learned have been from his books or his breakthrough or people he's mentored. But we were talking earlier about carrying the presence of God and how that's such an important revelation. And he told a story that when Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, that a dove came down and ascended on Jesus. And I'd like you to think about that. If a dove ascended onto your shoulder and you wanted to make sure that that presence, that dove never left, what would you do? Of course, most of our common answer are things like, well, I'd walk very carefully. It's a good answer. I would make sure that I didn't make any sudden moves or loudnings, or I would let people around me know that this dove is good and it's part of me and so forth. And then that's a good answer. But he said that the real revelation of protecting that presence is that in everything you do, you're aware of its presence. That in every word and every action, every reaction, everything you do, you think about that dove resting on your shoulder. You think about the awareness of that presence. A friend of mine, Ross Hall, met with me years ago, and he said, Brad, one of the great breakthroughs for you is when you can learn to walk in a way that is naturally supernatural. And that was such a ring to me. It was foreign to me. I didn't know I was hurting at the time, and I certainly didn't think that was in the cards for me, but it sure rang nice. And the more I've studied and deeper I've gone with this, the more I've realized that really supernatural simply means that I am walking in the constant awareness of his presence, and that he gave me the authority to do these things and much more. That everything that I do, I carry, I represent Christ. And that's such a wonderful thing. That's such a freeing thing. Because now it's easy for me. I have a one-dimensional approach. I don't have good days and bad days. I don't have anger and resentment. I don't have super jubilation and then depression. I don't have that, because if I'm going to walk every day and every moment aware of the presence of Christ in my life, then guess what? Everything is good. Everything is part of his plan. Everything is to his glory. All things work together for the greater good. And if I can learn to walk in that naturally supernatural stage where I'm fully aware of that presence, of that dove resting on me, that peace, that Prince of Peace, that presence, then guess what? Everything about me becomes a representation of that peace. And I know it sounds simple, but just try it. Because the culture of honor, frankly, it's only valuable when things aren't going well. And when things are going well, it just seems like everybody acts honorably. And maybe until you pull back some of the layers and the veneers and you see some of the motivation, the manipulation over money and power and recognition and authority and some of the judgments and class systems before you pull off some of the layers of that. But in reality, when a culture of honor, when the awareness of the presence of Christ is critical, is when things are kind of getting a little nutty and the fits hit the shan, if you will, and things are a little crazy, and now I have to walk in the presence of Christ as compared to me wanting to get in the flesh and start whacking and stacking and dealing with stuff and getting all up in the people's face because that's how I do things. Well, I don't really think that's a representation of Christ. I really don't. And so the only time, not the only time, but the most important time to have a culture of honor as part of your primary, not part of, as the way you walk and live and breathe, is when people act dishonorable. You see, when we go to heaven, everything's perfect. There will never be dishonor. There will never be conflict. So it's only in dishonor that I have the opportunity to give God that gift of representing Him in this world when everything says, meet fire with fire, meet dishonor with dishonor. It's the greatest gift, one of the greatest gifts, I'm not going to measure them, but one of the greatest gifts I can give to God is to represent His Son in a way of peace when people are not acting that way. So this is where we trade judgment for mercy, right? This is where we trade condemnation for restoration. This is where we can make that trade of fear for love, because anger is fear. Let's be honest. When we're angry, we're afraid of something, and I'll circle back on that in a later talk. But basically, the bottom line is that the culture of honor is only at its most valuable position when someone's acting dishonorable. So I hope you'll remember that. I hope you're not going to study this material for the purpose of control and the purpose of gaining power. I hope you're going to listen to it for the purpose of preparation for when things don't go well. I know how to handle it. Because if I can take someone as dishonorable and remind them that they're only operating out of a lie, they're not operating out of the truth of who they are. They're operating out of some deception they've received that's given them permission to act that way. And remind them of the greatness and the goodness and the truth of their birthright and their identity. And get them back to being aware of this constant indwelling. Then I believe at that point they can begin to live their life as a grateful response. It's not about discipline anymore. It's about your nature to be good. Your nature to represent what is welled up inside of your spirit and your soul. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense. I care for you. I want to see you win. This has been my journey for the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm honored to share it. God bless you, and thanks for tuning in.